Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here, and then I have to acknowledge one particular fact that being here and presenting in front of people I looked up to, and especially on the topic that I had spent like last 6 years researching on. And so, before I start, I just wanted to ask like a quick show of hands of people who have experienced maybe AR or VR headsets. Anybody? Well, that's a good number. So I think I'll just refine the presentation based on that. So yeah, quick context. So how this whole thing started. So for me, it's like 6 years ago, I was deciding between like I want to study typography in much more detail because that's one of my passion. And then apart from that, there was another thing that I really liked, which was emerging tech. And when I was making a decision between what is the thing that I really want to pursue and as a topic, and then as something that I want to research on. And when that was a point where I thought like maybe bringing in together these two passion things that I'm passionate about will make much more sense. And that's how I got it. So basically, I got into Reading and I started researching on this particular topic. And then yeah, since then it has been like an ongoing research, and then I'll be sharing about it. So yeah, starting the story. So basically, on much more on the paper side, like our modern typography story starts and this is again debatable, but I'll start with the Gutenberg Bible, and then after that, like we started moving as the evolution started happening. We moved towards more like mass-produced books. And then there came a time where it was more towards like 8-bit typography. Type was not so refined, and then after that, like it was much more like Windows text, and all like during this evolution, what was happening was basically text was improving at stages, and then there was a point where the quality kept on decreasing. And also one key highlighting factor was the depth, or basically the distance where text was read was also changing regularly. And so basically what happened was at later on the text shifted from desktops to our hands, and that kind of marked kind of change in the era of how we were consuming text. And then similarly, with every advancement, what was happening was there were new challenges that were coming in. And now, and when we talk about challenges, it's all about how we consume a typography, how we consume text. And now, again, we are at the cusp of something which is, I would say, a crucial shift in terms of how we consume typography, how we consume text, and that is the era of spatial typography. Basically, typography is not limited to just like screens or like papers right in front of us. It's something which is being, which is going to be much more ambient all around us. And then it's not like we are going to focus directly towards like 90 degrees, which has been our pattern in terms of like we are watching this particular screen, I'm watching this screen. Like it's much more like 90 degrees right in front of me. And then now as we move towards this era of spatial typography, the whole thing comes into, which is the aspect of more like distance reading. And when I say distance reading, most of the time what was happening was the text was more around like 30 centimeters. Now like that thing is totally changing. Now the minimum distance when we talk about spatial typography, it is going to be kind of 1.5 meters, and that's where the environment starts. And I'll share more on it in later slides. And with this kind of change, what has happened over the years and over this evolution is that the control, as like type designers or the designers designing maybe books or interfaces, the control that we had has been like reducing drastically. And just to give you a quick example, so books, we knew like what kind of paper was there, and then what kind of color the text is going to be. But again, as we are moving forward, then came a quick example could be like responsive typography. Now, as a designer, I am designing something, but I don't know like end user is going to consume that on a smaller screen, or is it going to be a bigger screen? And that kind of marks basically a shift in terms of how we design things, because we are losing control. And so before I move forward, there is a quick consideration that I want to make. So a lot of things that I'm going to discuss are going to be more towards like AR rather than VR. And then there is one note that I always give is basically VR is, again, we have a good control over the environment, because in that case, we know what the background is going to be. But again, when we talk about AR, then it's going to be ambient interfaces where like it would be somewhat like these kind of glasses. And I don't know like what the background is going to be. And basically, so that marks, I'll just like quickly jump on to the next slide, which is the biggest question. And then this comes in, like what is so special about spatial typography? Beyond like just 3D interfaces, there are certain challenges that are coming in. I'll just touch upon few of like few challenges which are from technical perspective, few are from design perspective. And this is just like few from each section. So one of the biggest thing is ever-changing backgrounds. Now there is a scenario where in coming time that I might not be looking at my screen, I would be looking at basically the teleprompter kind of text or something like that in my glasses. So in that case, when I'm indoors, it's much more easier because just imagine like you're wearing these kind of glasses, you have full control over the environment. You can dim the light, just like the problem that we faced in the morning, there were excess light, and then we were unable to kind of focus on the text and then see things. And then ever-changing background means if I start walking with these like AR glasses down the road, then again the ambient light would be much more. So again, legibility issues comes with that. So that is one thing, and basically that's the whole point here. Like apart from ever-changing backgrounds, which is like the background can be much more static, which is like home environment versus on the road. And then along with that, there are lighting conditions as well that come into play, which is like, so I think this is kind of an ongoing joke. It's much more easier to do AR in London where it's always dark, dark inside, not even indoors, but also like outdoors as well. But the moment when we talk about, so there is one fact, like a lot of people say that it can be taken care of like basically polarizing the lenses. But again, that polarization also like competes against the environment, which is like the polarization is limited to a certain extent where you can create the create enough legibility and the contrast to make the text much more legible. So again, and after this, like I think this is the biggest change that we'll see, and especially directed towards type designers, that basically we are going to be designing for whites now rather than blacks. Because what happens is in AR environment, everything is being created through adaptive light, which is light comes together and then pixels are lit. And the moment when we talk about like what is our habit, like the whole type discussions revolve around one thing, like how does our black look against a like white background. And then now what is happening is when we talk about like adaptive display, in that case, it's more the moment we say it's like pure black, it's true black, then that means all the pixels are off. And then if the pixels are off, then if there is a white background, then basically you can see through the text. So these are the kind of challenges that are coming in. And then this is again a known challenge that we have been facing across like decades. Resolution is again going down because now just imagine right now the screen in front of me is a retina screen. But the moment when I just like place this screen right close to my eyes and then just place a lens in front of it, so that retina resolution gets kind of like much more magnified. And then again, we are at the stage of like magnified screens where the resolution is like the effective resolution is much more lower. So again, we are going down that track. And apart from that, like there is another technical challenge, which is the field of view. So in AR glasses, it's not just that if the screen, so again, good example is screen. So when we look at the screen, then there is a small window that we see through. And a similar kind of stuff happens at this stage where the FOV is quite limited. So even though I could see the whole environment in these AR glasses, but there is going to be a small window where I can read the text, or where basically not even just text, all the like digital elements will be displayed. Apart from this, another, when we are talking about light and then we don't talk about how it behaves, is basically halation comes into play, which is all the letters, they have a ghosting or like excess glow around them, and then that becomes a problem when we are talking about the junctions. Basically, the whole point here is when there are two streams of light coming together, then where they join, basically there is going to be a bloom, and that becomes a challenge when we are designing typefaces. And another, to add onto this, like there is another factor which comes into play, which is chromatic aberration, which is these lenses, when they do magnification, then what they do is they kind of disperse the light, and then they show like these boundaries are much more like there are color boundaries. Again, as type designers, this becomes a huge problem because legibility and then readability also suffers. Like it's not just like few characters, it's just the all text is sometimes becomes unreadable. And another major kind of like issue tends to be the vibrating text, because right now what is happening is in AR what happens is, even if you move your head slightly, if a piece of text which is here, so the moment your head moves slightly, what happens is the text has to render at a different location. So constant the text is refreshing constantly at different places. So till the time it's kind of properly done, the users also face this issue of like vibrating text, which again hampers how the end user is going to read the text. And apart from this, again, now we are entering this era where it's almost going to be infinite possibilities in terms of text. This is a rather dystopian example, but kind of displays which direction we are going towards. So here it's more like we are going towards where now text is going to be like maybe 0.5 meters away to infinity, where it's like from personal space to the environment space. And when I say environment space, is basically you're walking down the road, your signages or even the annotations on the real world becomes the part of the environment, and then that is up to the designers who are designing these experiences. What do they want to limit in terms of like can you see it just like the text which is 10 meters away, or do they want to allow text being basically navigation point of view? Do they want to allow somebody who's navigating something which is much more like 500 meters or maybe 1 kilometer? And again, like with that, there are a lot of possibilities that come in, and then there are different kind of, so I did this classification in terms of simplifying things. Again, this makes things slightly easy. And so I'll move on to one important bit, which is a lot of time what we think is this is the best opportunity in terms of doing a variable fonts. And then again, I did this whole exercise in terms of the research, like how we can basically utilize the power of variable fonts into this particular new scenario. And then where it's almost like based on the distance, I could just change the weight of the text, and then there are different possibilities that are there. But let me break it to you. I'm sorry, that is not possible at this given point of time, because we live in the primitive. So when we are talking about like AR and VR, we live in this primitive world of text. And then it's more like 1990s of text, how things are being done. And the reason behind that is basically all the experiences or any thing that you are going to experience in these headsets are being designed using game engines. And then game engines are still in the 90s in terms of rendering text, which becomes a huge problem for us. And so just let me tell you how it works in the real world. This is the expectation. This is what we think that where we are. And just look at like on the right. So what is happening is on the left side, among those two images. So this is a screenshot from Unity. So left side is the basic Unity text. Right on the right side is like this used to be an independent like plugin, but now it's acquired by Unity. So what it does is basically, again, the features are much more primitive. And in this case, it's mostly like how text is being rendered in all the game engines or the application that are being designed is basically they create a texture, which is basically it's bitmaps now. So what happens is so the Text Mesh Pro takes a particular font on a particular size that is defined by the designer, and then it creates a texture atlas, which is basically a bitmap of the like the font. And then what happens is it works pretty well to the point where, like, if I have decided that the user is going to see the text, which is like maybe 30 pixels at a distance of 1.5 meters. But now we are talking about AR. We are talking about ambient interfaces. So you can't just stop the user from walking close up to that text, and then where the texture is much more like defined for just like 1.5 meters at 30 pixels. Now, if you're going closer to it, what happens is basically the distortion starts. And then what SDF? So basically Text Mesh Pro works on something called as sign distance fields, which is like interpolation of text, where what it will try to do is it will just try to, on the fly, it will try to create a bigger size of the text. And then one of the reason why, so one thing that can be done is the designers can go, or like the people designing the application can make the maybe like 72 pixels just for like maybe a smallest distance. But as you increase the font size, the texture size also increases. That means the application size is going to be much more. So that is the reason they try to optimize, and then that's where SDF comes into play. What a sign distance field does is it keeps on calculating the distance, and then based on that it just interpolates the text and then the fonts. And then when that interpolation happens, basically all the corners and all the details are getting lost. So most of the time, like I think the type designers will agree, like how many times we have spent like more than hours just tweaking that one pixel just to get that shape right. And then now if at the end everything is going to get murdered and the result is going to be like this, then it basically just kills the whole mood of why should we design for that. So along these, like the whole thing, I went on and basically I designed a type family for AR headsets, and it released with Google Fonts recently. So the whole concept is around like how the photons travel and then they strike a surface to form the text. So yeah, one of the things, like I wanted to spend more time on this, but again, right now the whole point is I want to spend more time on more important things. So I won't get into the design story because that's a presentation in itself. But again, I can quickly share like what are the nuances there in the typeface. So basically, the typeface is designed in such a way to keep in perspective the evolution of technology, and then whereas basically the version that you see is the Retina version, which is designed for the ultimate resolution, which is the Retina resolution. And the bottom one is designed based on the current scenario, which takes learnings from like all the previous examples, where it's almost like you could see like something which I like the ink traps, which I call light traps in this case, which kind of go towards the like reducing the halation and kind of going in terms of like forming real shapes just to like accommodate for the low resolution and other challenges that we face. And then apart from that, like there are like principles like Dwight's M formula, which were used just to render the text in much more refined manner. And so I won't spend more time on this, but I'll just go on to the most important fact, which is basically at this point of time, even though whatever we designed, so that's one bit of it. As type designers, we could do max something. But the whole fact is, at this point of time, what is happening is there is a technological change that is happening. So now there is a point where so also engineers are spending time in terms of like designing systems, much more refined systems. So there is a space where it's like now they are trying to find ways to implement text in a much more refined way in Unity and game engines. So which gives us an opportunity to basically collaborate so that we basically fuel the tech growth in the right direction. So we can go initiate that conversation that, hey, like these are problems that we have faced, and then could we do something about that? And then that's basically, we have particular choices at this given point of time, which is like maybe next 1 to 2, 3 years. Because so I also like, I didn't mention one thing. So I had been working with teams at Meta. I work as a product designer at Meta. So there is evolution that is happening. So we have two particular choices: either collaborate with these people and then get the best out of this opportunity, or repeat history, what has been happening, that as type design industry, we get the last chunk, we get the last pie, which is like, hey, like as tech people, we have designed these systems. Now this is up to you. Just create whatever you can based on all these constraints, and that's how we function. So the whole point is not to repeat the history and just go on to that lane of like we want to complain, but the whole ask is basically, can we work on better system to implement typefaces? And this brings to me to one on a particular reference from previous presentation, where Thomas like defined through that Venn diagram that right now a lot of work that happens in silos. and then basically it's a good opportunity that we come together, we kind of raise voice particularly of the demands of the things that that are there, and then kind of create this feedback loop to create a better system. And then which brings me to the second ask is, can we use this opportunity to create more inclusive system to implement global scripts? Because we know, he showed one example where the text, as UI designers, if they know like how things are breaking, what should they consider while designing those kind of things. If they are aware of that, then basically this conversation can fuel changes in the new upcoming systems where it's almost like we are changing everything. And so, yeah, I think this brings me to the end of the presentation, where these are the two final asks that I have. Thanks a lot.